Well, welcome back to Leading Leaders Podcast on the 2020 Servant Leader Series. I'm so glad you're here. I appreciate you being a part of our journey together. I want you to meet someone that I've only known for probably less than a year, but when Kenan and I first ran into each other, it was like a kindred spirit. You know, I do a lot of coaching in the leadership realm, which means I deal with some people who have addictions, people who are working in the business world, people with marketing backgrounds, people who are in leadership in various aspects, and entrepreneurialism is a big part of that. When I met Kenan, there were a lot of things that we said, yeah, I agree on that. 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 But we've taken completely different journeys to get to where we are. Kenan is a business owner. He owns a couple of different businesses, one in actual therapy where he has people who are licensed counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists on staff, another with lab where they do blood work and various things of that nature. But it's whatever impacts and helps people and generates revenue. So it's about business and it's business about people, which I really like. Recently, though, Kenan's had a new addition to his journey in, as we were discussing in our conversation, something that didn't really happen on purpose, but it happened because he was operating in his own purpose. And that is he's accidentally become involved in a very well-known political campaign. So I want you to help me to welcome Mr. Keenan Williams to the show today. Kenan, thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking the time. So tell me a little bit about this journey into entrepreneurialism. Did you grow up in a family that was entrepreneurial? Was that
no.
intentional as well?
No. You know, one of the things about growing up in a family, it can be advantageous, one or two ways. You can grow up in a family that gives you direction and set you on your course. Or you can grow up in a family that is in a crisis situation that will develop your course.
Yes.
Because character and, some of the greatest leaders are created in crisis situations, not in a perfect case scenario.
Right.
It's like finding your, I didn't read up on my identity, I just discovered it. Just run into it. But when you run from your, running from my past, I ran into my purpose.
Wow.
Because they were on opposite ends. So immediately when I ran from this way, I ran into that way. And so it's, it's not an accident, but it is, it can be unplanned.
Right.
As far as the direction that you're going. But, but my family was very, I would say different, but I'm not going to say different. I'm going to say it's very common to grow up in a culture of poverty and in a culture that trains you or teaches you how to be a good employee.
Yeah. Show up to work on time. Do what you're told to do. Keep your head down.
Yes.
Stay out of
know
the
your place.
Yeah.
Don't say this. Don't say that. Do as you're told.
Right.
Those are not leadership characteristics.
Right.
So when you have that leadership thing inside of you, it causes you to rebel.
Right.
And then rather than people embrace your difference or embrace the truth why you're rebelling, they criticize you. Right. Or they condemn you, or they call you a bad kid, or they call you a bad person because you're unwilling to fit into the mold of that culture. And I never fit.
So let me ask this question honestly, because this brings up a challenge, and I think globally in today's culture. And that is, it's real easy to, for lack of a better term, blame the failure on those who failed. Mm-hmm. It's really easy to say, well, if your culture wasn't like that, success would have come more easily. It's also easy to kind of put that old adage together that the crab's in a barrel. One crab finds freedom, starts to climb out, all the other crabs want to bring him back down. Mm-hmm. But there's also, in that same analogy, the monkeys who climbed the stick to get the bananas and got electrocuted along the way. And it's not necessarily, I don't want you to have the bananas, it's, dude, you're going to get electrocuted.
Yeah.
It's more of a savior mentality than it is a stay down here in the misery with us mentality. Mm-hmm. And so there's a large challenge, I find, especially in cultures, where you can't tell one of those attitudes or hearts from the other. Are you trying to save me? Are you trying to prevent my success because you're jealous of it? So which one of those did you experience?
Probably all of it.
Okay.
Probably all of it's a mixture. It's a mixture because if you don't really know the intent of a person's heart, then their actions all look the same.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It all looks the same because you don't really know what the intent of the heart is. You don't know if it's out of jealousy, malice, envy.
Yeah.
If
I
it's
don't know
out
if
of
you're
love,
trying to
if it's
save
out of
me.
care.
Or
I don't know if you're trying to save me. You don't want me to reach the top. So that's where, again, the leadership comes out.
Right.
Leaders don't wait for instruction. They create
Generally, no.
instruction.
Right. Yeah.
They don't wait for an answer. They create an answer. You don't wait for someone else to make a decision. You make the decision, and whether it's right or wrong, you still make the decision.
Right.
That's the difference between a leader and a manager.
You got to be willing to pay the consequences for taking that
There are
risk.
consequences. Yeah,
there's no
consequences.
win if there's no risk.
No, there's consequences to leadership. I mean, leadership is a lonely place. It's not the place where you always get pats on the back and everyone loves you. It's a place where you got one half that loves you and the other half that hates you.
Yeah.
One loves the decision that you made, and the other half says, "I can't believe you made that decision." But it's a good place because you can't fight who you are. Not when you hook up with who you need to be,
Right.
and discover yourself. It's just that for me it was, I had no idea. I knew I was different. I'm still different. I still don't fit the norm. I'm still in the room with congressmen, senators, whoever it may be, or other businessmen, billionaires, millionaires, or pastors or preachers, and I still just don't. I get the ambiance and I respect the ambiance, but I still have my own difference. I still, at the end of the day, I'm going to make my decision.
Right.
I'm not going to go to the right because that's what you say. I'm going to go to the right because that's the decision that I make according to everything that I've put together.
Right. And what you say may have influenced that decision, but didn't make that decision.
Well,
for me.
I always gather facts.
Right.
But facts are not facts are not always the truth.
That's absolutely true.
Facts are not always the truth, and so you have to go with your gut. I guess the world, we call it the gut, but I call it Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Lead me and guide me. And sometimes I get led the wrong way.
You get led a way that the world looks at and goes, "What are you
And
thinking?"
sometimes he leads me a way that I don't want to go.
Yeah.
And it can be full of obstacles and hard places and shipwrecks
Yep.
and prisons
He leads
and
to
chains.
Yes.
So, but at the end of the day, it's like Joseph. Joseph looked at his brothers and said, "Hey, it's okay.
I got a destiny, and I get it. Yeah.
It was God's will.
Yeah.
That's why I went through that. You didn't do anything. It's okay." Yeah. And I get that.
So how has your success, by whatever measure, compared to where you thought you'd be, number one, and number two, how does your achievement at this point, how does it reflect back?
But did I answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I think the crux of your question, or the crux of your answer was, the behavior all looks the same. I don't know. I can't judge.
I don't know your heart.
Yeah,
Now, if I know your heart, that's different.
Yeah. If you come right out and tell me, listen, you're not going to succeed because I'm not going to allow it, that's a different thing. So realistically, though, when you look back, and I've heard, I've interviewed guys from the NFL and players, and they look back and they're like, they're family members who still can't believe my success, or
Yeah.
who still begrudge it, or they still can't believe that I made it, that I was able to get free, et cetera, et cetera. So when you look back on the people who were on the journey with you early on, people who look at you and go, "Man, you just went off and became something totally different." How many of those are good, solid relationships now who say to you, "Help me get to where you got to"? And how many of those are like, "Man, I'm done with you"?
One of the things that, first of all, I don't consider myself successful.
Interesting.
I haven't reached success yet.
Okay.
I'm still on the road to success. I don't think success has an end until your life ends.
Okay.
So, there's a road to success, and it doesn't necessarily have a destination to it. It's just a path. So
It's a journey.
It's a journey. Success is a journey. It's not a place that you end up and
not
you
a
say,
destination. Okay.
I'm successful. Because when you get to that place, you're done.
Right.
You know what I mean? Does purpose ever stop? Purpose never stops until you're not here anymore. So I would never say that I'm successful. I've failed in a lot of areas, but I'm not where I used to be. But those people There are a few people in my life that have been there for a while. But it's very, unfortunate, but at the same time, it's good because, when you begin to reveal your purpose, you'll find out who your friends are,
Right.
who your enemies are. The ones that you thought knew you, they never really knew you. You'll find out who likes you, who don't like you, who believes in you, who doesn't believe in you. Purpose reveals a whole lot. And so on that, there are seasons that people are in that help you get to the next season. They may not be there for all 4 seasons.
Right.
But maybe they're just for the winter, to help you, get something that you need to get to the summer, So, but I could probably count on one hand the people that have stayed with me over the last 20 years on this journey that I've been on, and literally on one hand.
So when you look back to where you came from, I had a chance to talk to a guy by the name of Jacob Miles, who grew up in the projects of Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. And he said, the journey for me has been through corporate America, through global business, through politics. And he said, I look back to where I came from and I realized there are a whole lot of people who never left there, financially, physically, mentally.
Still there.
And
stuck in their season.
And they may always be there. He said, but I do everything I can to reach back and give them some direction, to give them some hope, to say it doesn't have to be like this. Mm-hmm. So what do your efforts look like to do a similar thing to that? Is that why you do what you do with the counseling? Is that why you do what you do in politics?
You know what? Everything I do is about I just want to help people. I want to, success to me is helping someone become better in life. That's what success is. If I can make you better, if I can bring addition and multiplication to your life, then I'm successful.
Okay.
Leadership is about making people better. It's not about programs. It's not about building buildings. That could be a part of it. I mean, it could take a building. It may happen along the way. Yeah. It happens along the way, but it's not. That's not what it's about.
Those are tools.
Those are just tools that you use to do what you've been called to do. Leadership is about helping people. If I have made you better when you and I meet, then I was successful in that meeting.
Okay.
That's the whole goal. And so the bigger the platform, it just gives you opportunity to help more people rather than just one-on-one with people. With a platform, I can help thousands of people at one time from the stage.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because what I share one-on-one is going to be the same that I share with 10,000 people that I'm speaking to, or 100,000 people that I'm speaking to when I'm doing my motivational speaking, or, so it doesn't really matter. And if it's one-on-one, there's a little more personal issues that we could probably talk about. But, I want to help as many as I can. I'm trying to fill the bed up.
And you feel that the communities, the culture, the families that you came from, they're receptive to that?
No.
Why do you think?
I wouldn't even expect for them to be.
Why do you think that is?
Same way what they weren't for Jesus. It should never be a shock to a leader that his hometown that he grows up in doesn't necessarily respect him as the leader that he is. Remember, he left because he said, in my hometown, they don't believe in me. They still saw him as the carpenter's son.
Right.
They saw him as the kid that was playing marbles. They didn't see him as the Son of God. And so he had to leave. A prophet is not welcome in his own home. So, of course, there are family members that don't believe in you, that still see you as the little boy that you were. And that's cool. I'm fine with that. That doesn't bother me. I think as a leader, you have to get past those emotions and understand that that's a part. It's counting the cost. A lot of people say, I want to be a leader, or this is who I am. But my question is, have you counted the cost?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, if no one believes in you, you have to believe in you. If no one believes the vision that God gives me, I have to believe that vision because I'm the one that has to fulfill it.
Right.
Whether you believe it or not, I'm still going to do it. It doesn't matter. But if you believe it, of course, that helps. But it's like David was in the cave. He said, look, I encourage myself. He had to learn to speak. There's no one that knows me better than me. No one in the world, right?
No one in the world.
So I know what makes me happy, what makes me sad, what makes me angry, what makes me frustrated, right? So if I'm in a position where I need to be encouraged, I know the words that I need to say to me to encourage me. I know the thoughts that I need to have for me to be encouraged in that moment. So I call it self-talk. I talk to myself all the time.
Right.
Whether I'm in the car, I'm in a room full of people, and they have no idea I'm encouraging myself. Because at the end of the day, I have to make sure that I believe in me, I believe in my own vision, I believe in my purpose, my significance, and I talk to me. You know, I can't wait on you to encourage me. You may not figure out who I am for another 10 years.
Right.
You know, by the time I'm old.
You may have no encouragement in you.
It may not even have any. So, you know, you got to know yourself. You can't wait on your family. You can't. I mean, how many great men do we know that God said, get away from your family? Abraham's the father of faith. And he left. He said, get away from your family.
Yep.
That is your place of familiarity.
Time for a clean start.
You will be too comfortable there.
Yeah.
They still see you for who you were, not who you are. And so we have to be willing to leave.
Same with Moses.
Say, you got to get away from your family. You just got to do it. Jesus did. He clarified it. He said, look, those who do the will of my Father, those are my mother and my brother. Remember, they were trying to get to him.
Yep.
And he just cut that thing and said, look, it's not about that. It's those who do the will of my Father. Those are my mother. I mean, you create a new family when you begin to move in your purpose. And you find them in all kinds of places.
So the 5 spokes that I talk about with Leading Leaders podcasts are authority, respect, influence, impact, and transformation. And transformation and story are so twisted together, so tied together, it's nearly impossible. But it's exactly what you just said, and that is the story that we tell ourselves is probably more important than anything else. More important than our goals, more important than our destiny, more important than our plans, more important than identifying our purpose, because the story becomes the purpose and vice versa. If we can't follow the story we believe, and if we can't believe the story we tell about ourselves, that's where you find that fake it till you make it. That's where you find people falling apart. But that whole cycle, in my experience, from authority to respect, it's dependent upon your story.
You said something about the fake it till. I've always had an issue with that statement.
Okay.
Fake it till you make it.
What's your issue?
Well, because why would I fake it until I make it? Either I'm who I believe I am, or I'm not. Proverbs says, so is a man think it's so easy. That means it tells me, what that says to me is, I don't know who you are by the way you're acting. You will always act like the person you think that you are. So I don't have to fake being someone. I have to be that person. Does that make sense?
I agree 100%.
I don't have to fake anything until I make it. I'm going to be who I am, and I'm going to go from here to here because that's who I am. So I don't have to fake anything. I just have to be who I am and not be afraid to be who I am, because people people repel your difference. People either repel your difference or they embrace your difference, because what they can't categorize, they criticize. What they can't put on cereal box,
Right.
they put under the shelf, you know, and you have to be willing to be okay with that. You just got to be okay with that.
So how does that lead you to where you are today, as far as running the kind of businesses that you run?
I had to learn that early on. I learned that in prison.
Okay. This part of your story we haven't talked about yet.
You didn't know that.
How'd you get there?
From 1986 to 1993, I was a gang member. I quit high school to join a gang.
Where at?
In Grand Prairie, Texas.
Okay.
Because football was over. Got injured. And it's my story. I hate telling my story all the time, but I'll share it with you because you really didn't know.
No.
I know, and it's so crazy because people see me today and this guy dresses nice, this guy's nice, he lives in a nice place, and they have no idea the process
Right.
that I've had to go through and the experience that I've had to have to get to where I am right now.
Right. But
Yeah,
that
I
was
started
preceded
doing
by
drugs and smoking
football,
crack cocaine
high school
in
football.
1987. So I was a crackhead from 1987 to 1993. Between 87 and 93, I was shot 6 times.
Wow.
I was arrested over 45 times between 87 and 93. I was homeless from 1989 to 1993. Vacant houses, no lights, no gas, no water. No one believed in me anymore. No friends, no family. I didn't even have a pair of shoes on when I went to jail. they used to have ministries coming in and out. President Mike Barber Ministries was one.
Right.
And I know the name because they were always there every year. You know, I knew they were coming. So when they came, I would always make sure I stayed in my cell because I didn't want those guys talking to me. I didn't like Christians, you know. And so I had a conversation with God in my cell one night. Night or day, I don't know. And Dad said, you don't have a window, so you don't know if it's night or day. It didn't even matter at that point. And those guys had affected me in a way because they kept telling me that they loved me, even when I said harsh things towards them. Being okay, but Jesus loves you. I said, man, I don't care about that Jesus crap. Don't talk to me about that. If he loved me, I wouldn't be here. You know, where was he at when I was going? You know, it's just, I was angry. But God's cool enough. He understands that.
Big boy.
It's us that get offended. You know what I mean? He's heard it all, you know? And I had a great conversation with him one night. And it felt really good, you know, because he didn't shove everything back down my throat. My father, unfortunately, great provider, but he was a horrible father. There was never an intimate conversation.
Wow. Nothing
About the girls, nothing about puberty, no, nothing. You know, it was shut up, go to your room. I'm the man, I'm a womanizer. You know, I'm all of this, and you're just
all
a child.
Rules, yeah.
Exactly, you know. There's no relationship in that. There's no growth in that. You know, and then he had anger problem. You know, when I was 9 years old, I got into a fight with the kids next door, and they were going to go get their cousins to come and fight me, because I always had a fighting problem. I love to fight. You know, it wasn't really a problem. I just love to fight. She put me in boxing, you know. And my dad gave me a 44 Magnum at 9 years old.
Wow.
Set me on the stairs and said, when they come up the stairs, you shoot them. And I sat on the stairs and I waited for those kids all day long to shoot them. But they never came up the stairs.
Good thing.
It's God's grace. Because I would have did what he told me. Because he was my authority. So that's sort of what I grew up in, you know. Watching the fights between he and my mother. And that's traumatizing the kids. You know, those things are traumatizing. So anyway, I accepted Jesus Christ one night in the cell. Man, baptized, filled with the Holy Spirit. I was on fire. I had never read the Bible in my life at this point. Literally. I didn't even know what had happened to me. All I know is I knew that it was real. And
not another religion.
No, it was, the presence was so strong. They thought that when I finally settled down, the guards were at the door looking in, getting ready to come in, because they thought I went crazy back there. People go crazy in that say, they lose their mind. And I did lose my mind. I lost my mind and took on his. You know, and I just kept telling them that Jesus is real, you know, and I couldn't wait to get out to tell everyone. So I, you know, got out of the game when I came out of the cell, got me a Bible, and I started going to church. You know, I took the initiation of coming out of the game, which was cool. Started doing something, God started teaching me about subtraction. You know, we always talk about the law of attraction. God started out with me with the law of subtraction.
Okay.
It's different. So I had to start subtracting wrong relationships,
right?
Wrong conversations, wrong things that I was seeing, wrong things that I was hearing, wrong places that I was going. And as I began to subtract, he began to do some addition and multiplication in some areas that were generically happening. You know, when I would subtract the wrong relationship, he would put a right relationship in. When I would subtract the wrong thing that I was looking at, he would give me the right thing to look at. So I changed my eating habits in there. I would go to chow, man. I'd sit straight up. And it's crazy because when I read about Joseph, I said, okay. I found me in the Bible. And I said, okay, if I'm going to follow Jesus, I got to do exactly like he does. I was foolish enough to do exactly what he does. I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I got to do what he does. And the first thing he did is he opened the Bibles and he found the place that was written about him.
Yeah.
In Isaiah. And he read about himself. And I said, okay, well, if he's in here, then I got to find me in here. So I found me in there. You know, religion would say you found it in. No, Jesus was not the first person I found myself in. I found myself in Joseph when I was reading. And, you know, Joseph went to prison.
Yeah.
But yet he became the king's right-hand man, and he was running the land. And he went to the palace. So I said, okay, well, if Joseph went from the prison to the palace, I'm going to go from the prison to the White House. And I would just believe that. And of course, I've been there.
20 years ago.
25 years ago, however long it was. was. 23 years ago. It's 1996. So it's 24 years ago. And I believed that I was going to go from the prison to the White House. So then I started preparing for that. When I would eat lunch, I would sit up straight, or go to the chow hall, and I would practice etiquette. You belong here. Yeah, I would practice etiquette at the table. Said, okay, well, if I'm going to eat with the king, I got to learn how to eat in the king's house, because Joseph, when he went up, he shaved his beard because that was a respectable thing to do, right? Huh? So I would read books. I read 248 books in 2 years. Wow. Between 1996 and 1998 when I got out. 248 books, because I consumed myself. I understood that reading was necessary. He said, be not conformed, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Well, you can't renew it if you don't read. That's exactly right. It's not going to just happen in prayer. You got to read. You got to retrack your thinking. And so, Paul said, let this mind be in you. And I started realizing that, okay, well, they said, because they told me I smoked so much crack cocaine, I fried my brain. They said I'd never be able to think straight. Because I had done too many drugs. I would just, they thought I'd be in and out of prison. You did all this prophesying. It's so funny now. And so I started reading and reading and reading. I consumed myself with reading. I started walking different. I learned how to walk. I learned how to talk. I learned handshakes. I was reading everything I could. I got back in school. Got my GED, because I quit high school 2 weeks later. Right. Got my GED and then started college. And they wouldn't let me in school at first because I was a gang member. So I wrote the warden over 150 letters to get in school. And then one day I saw him walking across the chow hall, and I ran up. I went around some guys and got there, and I said, warden. And I called his name, and he turns around. All the guards turn, because the warden's like the president in prison. Right. He's surrounded by Secret Service men, okay? He turns around, he looks at me, he says, Williams, I know who you are. If you don't write me any more letters, I'll let you in school. I said, yes, sir, that's all I wanted. So I walked off, I got in school. And as I began to read, and it really began to retract my thinking, it began to encourage me. It began to let me know that I could do something different with my life. And so reading those 248 books and started preparing. I started preparing for the White House. I started preparing for success. That's why I tell people, you tell me about your faith, I want to watch what you're preparing for. Right. Preparation is the proof of your faith. If you're not preparing for what you tell me you believe is going to happen, then you really don't believe what you're telling me that you believe is going to happen. Right. So, my place of preparation. You're not taking steps to be ready for it when it gets here. You're not doing it. We will never fail because of a lack of opportunity. I'm going to have a great harvest, but I still got a little bitty basket. And won't even plant the seeds. You got to plant those seeds to get a harvest, right? So we'll never fail because of a lack of opportunity. We'll only fail when we're unprepared when opportunity presents itself. Right. So preparation is the key. Be prepared, be prepared. Somebody thinks preparation. So I started preparing in prison, man. I'm 24 years ago, in the midst of prison, I said I was going to go to the White House. When was your first trip to the White House? It was the inauguration for Barack Obama. It was inaugural ball was my first trip to the White House. Okay. And it was really cool to see the White House in D.C. And I still didn't know what was going on. Still clueless. I was still prepared. But I was in the wrong place. I learned in prison about the law of place. You can have all the gifts and callings that you want, but if you're in the wrong place, you're inoperative. You got to be in the right place, So best running back in the world is useless on an ice hockey rink. He's horrible. He's horrible. He's horrible, man. So prison became my college. It became the place where I learned about God. I learned the Word. I began to walk by faith and not by sight. I started believing in myself. And seeing all the men that God used, like Moses, who was once a murderer. Right. But yet became the greatest deliverer behind Jesus Christ, because nobody else has led that many people out. Right. Other than Jesus. Are you with me? That's true. Moses was a bad guy, Yeah. And so I understood Moses, even right now, it was just a couple of months ago, I was like, man, I still feel like Moses at times, where, Moses was a Hebrew, but he was raised Egyptian. Yeah. So Moses was too Hebrew to ever really fully become an Egyptian. But yet he was too Egyptian to ever become a Hebrew. So there was always a struggle. And I began to understand
he struggled like you did with being and place.
It's just,
who am I and why am I where I am?
There's a struggle.
They don't
There's
fit.
identity crisis there,
Yeah.
you know? And so all the men that I saw that God was using were really misfits. You know, and then one day he shared with me, the reason why you're misfit there is because you're a perfect fit here.
Right.
You'll never fit there because you fit here.
I think it was C.S. Lewis that said, when we realize that nothing in this life will truly satisfy us, it's only then that we realize we weren't made for this life in the first place.
It's just different, man. I mean, even now, going to church or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I remember going to church in prison. The guys would not let me in those cliques, you know. The guys that sat on the front row and hung out with the chaplain, and I thought they were special, you know. Like, oh man, they really got it, you know, missing something. But then I had to embrace my difference again. So, okay, that's for them, that's not for me. And, you know, it was cool because I didn't get caught up in that religion. Some of those same guys I see them in prisons right now when I go in. You know, go in, they do the same thing, they come out and they do the same thing. They're not, it's unfortunate, but you could pray all day long. You got to renew your mind.
Right.
You can, you know, it's one thing, and renewing the mind, you know, when I go over to the addiction side of my counseling facility, so what I share with parents and kids, okay, it's one thing that we get rid of the addiction, right? The drugs. But now we have to deal with the behavior.
Yeah.
Because in that addiction, it creates a behavior that couples with it, that partners with it. There's the addiction and there's the behavior. The addiction is gone.
And somewhere between the addiction and behavior is thinking.
Well, you're thinking, that is your thinking.
Yeah.
That's why, that is your thinking. That's why you can only, you have to learn how to think
You can only
different.
do what you think.
What you
If
think.
you don't change your thinking,
It controls your behavior.
It's not,
yes.
And sometimes people blame it on the chemical substance, which is true. There's
it has a whole lot to do with it. But when the substance is gone, that thinking remains the same because it's tracked itself in your mind.
Yeah.
And so now we've got the addiction, the drugs are gone, but we still need to bring some freedom to you. Yeah. We got to teach you how to think again.
And that the other challenge that I find with that, I spent 25 years addicted myself, and seeing people try to simply mask the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to act like that. I'm going to act like this.
Yeah.
There's no difference between that and faking it till you make it.
No.
Because you may go out and pull all the oranges off of that tree and tape apples on.
Mm-hmm.
But come fall, the apples are going to rot and fall to the ground. And come spring, oranges are coming back.
Yes.
Because that's the kind of tree it is.
Yes.
And until you pull that thinking up by the roots and change it. And that goes right back to where we started our conversation. Mm-hmm. When you look at cultures where poverty is the mindset,
mm-hmm.
it's not just that poverty is a reflection of the income level. Poverty is the way people think. Poverty is the way they see themselves. Poverty is the story they tell about themselves.
Being broke and poverty are two different things.
I agree. Poverty is not an income situation.
It has nothing to do with an income situation. It's just about the way you think. So, and
that's why somebody with a poverty mindset could win the lottery and be broke again in 6 months.
Of course. I mean, I've been a millionaire twice. I've been broke 3 times. But I'm going to go get it again, right? Because I have a poverty mentality, you know. It's just being broke is situational. It's circumstances. It's things happen, you know. Sometimes it's mismanagement. It's been my fault, you know. I mean, I've done very well in life. I've been so blessed. I've done very well. The craziest things I could ever imagine, you know. It's like, wow, okay. And I give him all the credit, you know. It's not because I'm so smart. I can be in a room. I'm landed in a room full of all these people from Stanford and Harvard and Yale, and I'm looking and I'm saying,
they're like, where'd you go to school? Oh, prison.
Prison.
Coalfield unit. You graduated Stanford, Harvard, Princeton, Coalfield.
Oh my gosh, it makes me laugh. You know, it makes me laugh. It's sarcastic. You know, they laugh too. Yeah. Sometimes they don't even believe it. Like, yeah, right. Where'd you go to college? I'm telling you, I went to college in prison. You know. But at the end of the day, we're all in the same room.
I made a presentation in a condo about a year ago, and it was one of those, like you're talking about, just the little tours, right? And so we show up at the University of Kinshasa, and there's 15 people at the head table, and I'm sitting down on the end with my translator, and they all stand up like popcorn and introduce themselves and share their accolades and accomplishments, and they're all speaking French. I don't have a clue what they're saying, right? they get all the way to the end, and I stand up and waved and gave my name, and I sat down. My translator goes, "You're not done." I'm like, "That's all I got to say about me." He said, "No, they expect you to teach." And I'm like, "You see all the people at this table, why would they want me to teach?"
Right.
He said, "No, that the thing you taught on attitude last week, they want you to do that here." And I'm like,
Yeah.
I stood up, I gave it 45 minutes. Afterward, we're all called to the dean's office. I'm like, oh boy, here we go.
Here we go.
So I'm in the dean's office, and the dean speaks English and French quite well. And so he said something in French to my escort, and Dr. Kasanga kind of laughed out loud and then said something to me. And then the dean says, "Would you come back here and teach that as a 12-hour course?"
Wow.
I'm like, well, there's probably 12 hours worth of content there, but I've never done it as a 12-hour course. He said, "No, I mean for graduation." I'm like, you mean when you come back here and teach for 12 hours for the graduation ceremony? Because that's a long ceremony. He said, no, I want you to teach it as part of the doctoral program. And I'm like, well, I'd be glad to, but I said, honestly, probably anybody in your psychology department teaches the same thing, so I don't know what the point would be. He said, no, they don't. I'm like, well, maybe you should talk to your dean of psychology. He said, I am the dean of psychology. I have 2 degrees in psychology and 1 in psychiatry, and I've never heard the stuff that you're teaching today, but it's incredible.
Wow.
And I said, okay. He said, would you come back here and teach it? And I said, I'd be glad to, but your doctoral students are going to be really disappointed because I only have a high school diploma.
Yeah.
He said, I'll give you an honorary doctorate because the work that you've done to write what you just taught today is over the top. Nobody's done that much work in this area. And I'm like, well, that's pretty impressive, but I'm kind of feeling like you. I'm looking at all these, like, so where'd you go to school? Lancaster. A little high school with 215 graduates. I mean,
we went to school of life.
Yeah, that's
experience.
But like you, I mean, you walk through my library coming in. I haven't stopped reading since I started in my 20s.
No, I still read 2 books a month.
I don't get too much because I dig too deep. I got a lot of half-price books over there.
I go to half-price books. I don't go buy brand new books. That's crazy.
Yeah. You got to have a budget for that.
Yeah. I don't go. I used to do that, but I don't do that anymore. You got to be a little bit smarter.
So tell me what you're doing now, as far as, and I know you still run 2 businesses. You still got employees that you're looking after. You got a family you're looking after. But you're working on another project right now and hiring some people and making some impact. And I would say probably most likely, the average person will look at you and go, "Wait, you
all the time
doing that?
Yeah.
Why?" So tell me what
I
you're
do
doing
get
to
that.
shock people.
So I'm the regional director for the Trump campaign, and I have 7 counties that I'm over. It's really cool. I'm the only ex-convict that's ever ran a presidential campaign.
Wow.
God makes history all the time.
Yeah.
So it makes me laugh. You know, I tell people all things are possible. There's nothing that is impossible if you just believe. And it wasn't intentional. It sort of just like fell into place.
Right.
You know, because on that road, you can't always see what's over the hill. But when you're trusting God and you know you're on the right road, you know that there's always something good that you're
doing it for purpose, not on purpose.
Doing it for purpose, you know, and you get mixed emotions. Some people like the president, some people don't.
Right.
That doesn't matter to me. I'm honored. I am honored to be the regional director for the Trump campaign. It is an honor.
And is it...
That's not supposed to happen.
Honestly, is it an honor because of the position and the opportunity and the influence, or is it because of the ideological alignment?
All of it.
All the above.
All of it. I have to say all of it. I would never think in a million years that one day being homeless and being shot 6 times or being in prison and then all of a sudden working on a presidential campaign.
Right.
Not just any campaign. Not a mayor's campaign or city council or the presidential campaign, probably the most controversial campaign in the world right now.
Right.
And God has entrusted me, and He has entrusted
genuine
me.
Global impact.
Yes, and I run that here in Dallas. So, again, we're not limited to who we can become and what we can do if we're willing to prepare and count the cost. Is there a lot of criticism at times? Sure there is. But I tell people all the time, I'm not good at politics. You know, I hadn't been. I told one guy, look, you probably don't need to say that to me because I hadn't been saved that long. Okay.
I'm so close to the edge.
Right? So close to the edge. Yeah, you know, I like to box. Okay. You know, we still have lines of respect. You know, but it's cool to know that I'm in a place of influence, and I see that. You know, when you go and speak and you're honored, and it's not. I'm honored. I'm not honored because of me. It's like a police officer. You don't stop in the middle of the street when he does this because it's him.
Right.
You do it because of the badge.
Right.
And
the
so,
authority that's carried with
because
it.
of the authority that comes with that. And so, man, it's awesome. And there are times I still cry about it. You know, when I go places and I get acknowledged or I have to go and speak to all of these people that are so much smarter than I am. But they're not smarter than God.
Right.
And, you know, it doesn't always have something to do with intelligence. It's not always about, now, intelligence counts. Reading, you know, I'm quick to tell people,
you better sharpen the tools you're given.
You better, you know, you know, Moses was one of my examples. He writes all of this in the Old Testament, but the only way he could do that is because he was educated.
Right.
Paul writes 2/3 of the New Testament. He could only do that because he was educated.
Right.
And so when I saw that in prison, I knew that education was imperative for me. I said, God, I don't want to be limited to what you want to do in my life. If I'm going to go to the White House like I see, and I'm going to run the country with the king, then I have to be educated. I have to know what I'm doing. I have to read. I have to be able to communicate and articulate. I have to be able to understand from all aspects. Leadership is not about, you know, even yes, I'm a Republican. Yes, I'm a conservative. However, leadership is not just about a party.
Right.
It's about the people. So I have friends that are liberals. I have friends that are Democrats. I have friends that are independent. I have people that I have to deal with from every aspect. And I love hearing their heart because when I hear their heart, it brings a sense of respect from them to me and from me to them. I don't shove it down their throats that they believe what I don't believe.
And
I hear their heart and then I address it.
And there's two other aspects to that too. And you know, when I talk about authority and respect, both of those in my experience are, they're two-way streets. You don't get authority until you give authority. If you're not surrendered to authority, you don't get any more.
Right.
And respect is the same way. If you don't give it, you're not going to get it. But the second thing of that, like you said, you listen to their hearts, and what you find is there's a lot more common ground than there is disrupted ground.
A whole lot. But you have to be willing. It's all about relationships.
You got to get past the labels. You got to get past
the emotions and all that stuff.
Pedagogy.
So you know, one of the things that I'm teaching right now, I do something called TVLI trainings. It's Trump Victory Leadership Initiatives. And in that TVLI, I really share with people, you know, we can't win who we offend.
Right.
Because if I come at this person and I offend them, they'll never hear the truth that I have to share with them. So I interact in a different way as a Republican, as a conservative. Unlike I see a lot of my friends or a lot of people that I know that those Democrats, or they say this or they say that, and that's fine. That's between them and God how they handle it. But my point is never more important than the person.
Right.
That person in front of me, as a leader, is more important than my point. And if I'm going to be a good leader, I have to be able to lead them.
You know what I noticed about 10 years ago was that if a Baptist and a Buddhist jump out of an airplane together, there is no law enforcement officer from the law of gravity checking at the door to ask which party they belong to.
No.
Nobody asks for their...
No, you can hit the ground. You better have a parachute.
You better be... And so the laws of the universe, the laws of gravity, the laws of life and death, the laws of heaven and hell, they impact everybody, regardless of your political affiliation or your bank account or your marital status or your sexual agenda
they're called
or your
principles.
sexual orientation.
Yes.
And when you understand that, our ability to observe and love and participate with other human beings who are under the same laws that we are,
right?
Those aren't about U.S. laws. They're not about domestic laws. They're not about even federal laws. And when I travel to the Congo, those human beings are the same human being that I am. And
God loves them as well.
I'm not asking the question about education or political affiliation or what president you love or serve.
It has no relevance,
and it shouldn't. But it does become a barrier of conversation and a barrier of distinction for some people. And I honestly, I think it's heartbreaking, but it is the way to kill, to steal, and to destroy. Divide first.
What's the difference between a leader and a follower?
Or as you said,
followers
you're a manager.
followers just follow whatever everyone else is doing. Leaders lead. You know, you'd go outside of the norm. So I'm very, as again I shared, I'm honored. I mean, I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative. If you have a problem with me because I believe that I'm pro-life and I believe that every baby that hits the womb has a purpose, then that's not my problem. That's between you and God.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you don't like what I believe.
Yeah. Don't work that out.
Work it out with him. It's what I believe. If it's becoming. I wasn't a Republican until 6 years ago, and I discovered that I was a Republican. I discovered that I was conservative because I was taught that I was a Democrat.
Right.
I was taught that. It was the culture. But when my friend Rodney Anderson was our state rep at the time. Now he's the chair for the GOP. But when he and I began to spend time together, we had so many commonalities. I met him at a speaking engagement for the NAACP I was speaking at. And there's 2 white people in the room. There's him and another guy named Matt, right? And Rodney and I connected, and we're talking afterwards, and we found out we both grew up in Grand Prairie. I grew up on one side of the tracks. He grew up on the other side of the tracks.
Literally.
Literally. We're the same age.
Wow.
13, 14 days apart. Literally. We knew all of the same people.
Probably went to the same school.
We went to different schools. He went to Grand Prairie High School, South Grand Prairie High School, Grand Prairie High School, and then I went to Sam Houston in Arlington because 5 streets where I lived in Grand Prairie in that community, they moved into the Tarrant County side.
They bust him over.
Bust them over, exactly. Yeah. I didn't know what was going on back then, but they were still integrating, back then, and which was really cool because I attribute that to my ability to communicate with everyone.
Right.
It diversified.
Gave you exposure.
It gave me exposure. Right. I began to, versus my other friends lived in one culture.
Right.
I moved into a culture with whites and some Hispanics and Asians, and so it was so diversified. It helped me to communicate, and I didn't get stuck in this paradigm of thinking on one culture.
Right.
And I believe that is even for now. So he and I were spending some time together, and man, we were clicking. He never pushed being a Republican on me, ever. And then after about 6 or 7 months of hanging out with him, I'd go places, we meet, we do things. And I looked one day, I said, man, you know what? I think I'm a stinking Republican. It's like, I already knew you were, because you have conservative beliefs.
I do find it to be true. If you just gave somebody a checklist of this is what's important to me and took all the labels off of it, there'd be a whole lot more people that said, I agree in those ideas. I believe my mom and daddy have a right to live, and so does my baby sister.
Yes.
There's no question in my mind about that.
Yes, just the whole 9 yards. It's and then I started doing my research. And in doing my research, I was just like, wow, are you kidding me? Most people have no idea that the first Republican convention was held here in Texas was with 14 African Americans. They started the Republican Party in Texas. Yeah. There was no Republican Party here. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And again, I have friends from all parties, so I never condemn or criticize another party. I just state facts.
Dr. Carol Swain is one of my friends, and she teaches at Vanderbilt. She teaches poli-sci, and she's been referenced in several documentaries, and she talks about the history of what people call the Great Departure.
Yeah.
When all the Democrats became Republicans and vice versa. And I'm like, when she teaches on that, you're like, okay, so there's a whole lot of hogwash and brainwashing that goes along with that, just that philosophy.
Of course there is.
There's no accuracy in it at all.
Of course there is. No, you have to, all the way up to the 60s is when everything started changing. But you had people like Malcolm X that spoke against it and said, hey, look, you can Google it. 1964, Malcolm X made a statement to blacks. If you vote for another Democrat, you're a political chump and you failed your race.
Yeah.
I started looking at the Republican Party created the anti-slavery laws, but it was the other parties that were fighting the whole slavery.
You mean like
so
KKK
wow.
and Margaret Sanger?
Margaret Sanger, Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
I make it real simple to people. You say, well, Planned Parenthood has great things in it. Of course it does. So does a cupcake.
Yeah.
Right? But it's full of sugar.
Yeah.
So you have to understand the core. Margaret Sanger was a racist.
With an agenda.
With an agenda, black genocide,
Yeah.
and she created Planned Parenthood. Now here's the cool part, because I make it real simple. I said, you're from the hood, right? And it's called Planned Parenthood. It was designed for the hood. That's the only place you could find it, was right by the hood. We call it the ghetto. We call it the hood. I need to stop. I'm about to have a coughing attack here. My allergies again.
So, real quick.
You're rolling it, but you can cut and edit and all this stuff. Sorry, I didn't mean to get into the Republican thing.
No, that's fine.
I'm passionate about being Republican. I love it. And more people are waking up. They're getting, I appreciate a president, President Trump, relieve historically black colleges of $322 million of debt. Most people don't even know that. He signed a Senate bill a few weeks ago.
Democrats do that?
He signed a Senate bill a few weeks ago that says historically black colleges always have to be funded now for the duration. He got an award from the historically black colleges for helping out so much. He's fighting criminal justice reform. 4,000 men being released from prison as of last month because of the First Step Act that he pushed that they didn't want to sign. Out of 4,000 men being released, 91% were African American. 91%. Racists don't do that.
Why were they released?
Because of the First Step Act. The First Step Act, he made it retroactive, meaning these cases had the opportunity to go back before court. The sentences were too long. One person gets probation, the other one gets 10 years. That's injustice. So the First Step Act allows people to take their cases back. And because the criminal justice system is so crooked and so biased, it's, I call it systemic racism. It was designed for that. Even if there was something I was reading the other day about the voting, when they created the laws where you ex-felon, you couldn't vote and all that stuff was a part of the plan. Those laws were created before there was mass incarceration.
They were created to minimize the number of people and
Exactly.
the impact they would have.
Exactly.
Because they fought for the right to get
Because
to
the
right
mass
to vote.
incarceration was coming. There was more mass incarceration under Bill Clinton than ever in the history of time. Now he lives in Harlem. He locked all the black folks up and now he lives there. Okay? People have to know that. But then they wanted to vote for Hillary Clinton.
Hillary said her greatest hero on earth was Margaret Sanger.
Was Margaret Sanger, who was a racist. So, but it's unfortunate people don't research because they get caught up in their emotions, and I get that.
And they're caught with the label. I'm a Democrat, therefore I must believe and agree with everything they say, whether I really agree with it or not. And again, there were Republicans that are the same way. Like you, I've heard them with vitriolic statements.
I know some bad Republicans. I know some bad Republicans.
I know some bad Republicans. I know some bad Christians.
I know some bad Democrats. I know some bad Christians, some bad preachers, some bad teachers. There's no perfect church. There's only a perfect God. Yeah. There's no perfect man. There's only a perfect God. So there are a lot of people who say they are Republicans, but they're really not. So they hide behind the title.
Take just a minute as we wrap up here and tell the people how they can engage with what you're doing, how they can get involved with what you're doing, and how they can, whether it's to support you or participate with you or whatever. What's the best way?
Just email me. Give me a call. You can email me at Keenan@dallasgop.org. I use that one. It's more simple. Again, Keenan, Keenan @dallasgop.org.
I'll put that on the screen.
Get me involved. Call me on my cell phone, 817-98. You've got my cell phone number. Okay. That's fine. I'm fine with that.
All right. How would they engage with you? What do you want?
It depends on who they are and what they want to do.
Okay.
I don't like to just stick people somewhere. I want to know your heart. I want to know what your passion is. I want to put you in the best place.
But at the same time, I would think a general push right now would be get yourself educated, get out and vote.
Well, get out and vote. Voter registration right now is really, really, really important because you'd be shocked at the people who are not registered to vote. They could just have moved from one city to the other city.
Yeah. We just moved in March, but we just got our voter registration cards.
And sometimes they put that on the back burner. So we're setting up a lot of voter registration right now. That's like first and foremost. Getting to some of these MAGA meetups, learning about some of the policies that the president has signed and some of the bills, the legislative pieces. Just being in the environment will spark your passion. Yeah. But you got to be in the environment first. So getting involved could be volunteer work. It could be, working on the campaign, working for a certain, because we're always looking for someone to help, people that are passionate about what they believe. It could be working voter registration tables. It could be helping us put out yard signs. It could be having a watch party, becoming a neighborhood team leader. One of the things we're focusing on is creating neighborhood team leaders, meaning that if you're a neighborhood team leader, you'll have a watch party at your house and invite your neighbors.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, those neighbors invite neighbors the next time. And now you, as one person, has now affected your whole community. And everyone knows what you do and who you are and what you stand for. And now they're on board because you're building those relationships. So, we've got a lot of different strategies that we're using that are coming from DC, and then they hand it down. So we're all on the same page all around the country. We're gaining momentum. It's fun. It's not always easy work. Sometimes it's hard work. And you can't wear your emotions on your sleeves. You got to love people where they are. Like God loved us where we were, So I really focus on that every day, man. I don't get caught up into he's a Democrat, he's a liberal, or I don't look at people in a bad way. I love them where they are, because being a leader, that's what we have to do. So
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Keenan, I appreciate your time today. I appreciate you being here. Hopefully we'll have more conversations like these in the future.
Yeah, we will, for sure.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you again for tuning in to Leading Leaders Podcast and the 2020 Servant Leader Series. I'm really glad you were here. Again, reach out to Kenan. You can reach him at Kenan at dallasgop.gov.
.org. Kenan at dallasgop.org.
dallasgop.org. And I will also post his phone number and email address in the context as well. Thanks again for watching. We appreciate you. Have a blessed day.